And that is how I made my first $1 million as a dentist. I made less than $80,000 total in my entire life. There were mornings where I cried before going into work. It was a challenging time. I lost weight in the first few months. Then my first year as a dentist, I made dollars. I hit the $1 million mark at about 18 months. Think of marketing as fuel and systems being the engine. Welcome back to another episode of the Lifestyle Practice Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Derek Williams, and I'm really excited about what I want to talk through today. And that is how I made my first $1 million as a dentist. This episode isn't meant to impress anyone. It's not meant to create comparison or pressure. My goal in this is really to give you an inside look into, now that I'm 10 years out of graduating dental school, looking back and saying, okay, what actually mattered and what didn't in my ability to grow my practice and make my first $1 million in dentistry relatively, and to explain why this was much more about focus and execution than it was intelligence or talent or just luck. So one thing that kind of puts this in a perspective for me personally is I graduated dental school and became a dentist at the age of 28. Previous to that, my entire life, if I try and count up my income, I'm pretty confident that I made less than $80,000 total in my entire life before finishing dental school. Then my first year as a dentist, I made $600,000. So I hit the $1 million mark at about 18 months into being a dentist. My second year, my income was about $750,000. As you can see, dentistry changed the financial trajectory of my life, and that happened faster than I expected. And not because it was easy, but because I was playing a similar game that I had played earlier in my life, but just at a much higher level. Like I said, I finished dental school in 2016. I had about $300,000 in student loans, and I bought a practice straight out of school. I did not work as an associate first. And looking back, buying a practice was the single most impactful financial decision that I made and what really changed things. But at the same time, it was extremely challenging. It was heavy. I was learning how to be a dentist, how to manage a full schedule after coming out of dental school with seeing maybe 3 or 4 patients a day at the most. So there's that side of things, all while trying to keep patients comfortable and having good clinical outcomes. And then there's this whole other side of things that I was learning as far as how to become a good business owner and a leader, managing my time, the time of my team members, looking at the systems, the marketing, admin things, and just the countless amount of decision making that needed to happen each and every day. Many of you have heard me say it, but there were mornings where I cried before going into work. It was a challenging time. I lost weight in the first few months. Felt like every part of my brain was kind of being stretched at the same time. So if you're early in ownership and thinking, okay, this is way harder than I expected, that doesn't mean that you're failing. It usually means that you're doing something that is very meaningful. So for me, there was a moment where I kind of had this big shift, and that took place in my second month owning a practice. And in that month, we doubled the historic average, the monthly average that the practice had been doing before I bought it. And that moment was important, not because of the money necessarily, but because it changed my belief system. It showed me that growth didn't have to be slow if the right things were in place. It made me realize that the ceiling that I had in my head was artificially low. And, once your belief expands, your behavior changes, your goals change, your standards change. And that's what happened for me. That moment raised my ceiling of what I thought was possible, and it opened the doors in my mind to aim higher. And after my sights were higher, it led me to looking differently at the areas of opportunity in my practice. So one point quickly, we are the Lifestyle Practice. We are a coaching company that focuses on this. And for me, hiring a coach, the biggest benefit was helping me more than anything with focus. Having someone to be able to say that I can look at that has been where I've been and they are where I want to get to, being able to trust that person and hearing them say, yes, this is where your energy and time should go right now. The rest can wait. That is incredibly grounding. And without that, I probably would have tried to do too many things at once and slowed down the progress that I could have seen. So that's exactly what we do at the Lifestyle Practice. We're focusing on very specific goals and evaluating all the areas of opportunity and seeing, okay, out of these 10 things, what are the top 3 that are really going to move the lever? And that is what we're going to focus on, prioritize, and really make sure that we have a good plan of action for that lever actually moving. So as I kind of talk through some of the different things in my situation and in my practice, and kind of start listening to this type of rapid growth, they often assume that it had to do with like adding implants or higher profit procedures or, doing more marketing. And of course, every office and scenario is different, and it is for every client that I work with. But this is, again, just me in my specific practice. It was more simple than that. The biggest driver of our growth was proper diagnosis paired with good case acceptance. To be clear, this had nothing to do with like pressuring patients, and it had everything to do with just better communication. And here's one point. Many dentists spend a lot of time explaining how dentistry works. Talk about decay, they talk about bonding and materials and technique and which lab they're going to send things to and why it's better. The problem is most patients do not care. Patients care about outcomes. They care about avoiding future problems. They care about solutions. And when you overwhelm patients with details that are off in the weeds and they don't understand how it applies to what they are thinking, it does not help them. It confuses them, and confused patients do not move forward. And once our diagnosis and case acceptance improved, we ran into the next constraint, which was passivity. I simply couldn't do all of the dentistry that I was diagnosing, working at that point. So we worked on the schedule. I taught every single team member the steps behind how we would schedule it differently and why our reasoning for scheduling in this way. And guess what? Efficiency went up. Another thing that helped was I added team members before I felt completely ready. This was a bit scary for me at times. Again, a good place where a coach came in very helpful for me and helped me make that decision at the right time to get ahead of that. And that was excellent. And it led me directly into a big focus on delegation. I stopped doing tasks that the previous owner had been doing, and that freed up both time and mental energy, which there can be a lot said for the benefit of that. And so again, we raised the ceiling, but it was only after doing those things that I began to focus a little bit more on things like high profit margin procedures and marketing. Think of marketing as fuel and systems being the engine. Most dentists try to add fuel to a small engine or an engine that is leaking. Get the engine that you need, fix it, beef it up, whatever you need to do to get the right engine in place, and then add more fuel. Leadership was the real accelerator to all of this. I had to make the decision to step fully into leadership, which was not as easy as, you might think for someone that's buying their own practice. I was nervous at first. My staff would recount to me many times over the years that the first day that they met me, I looked like a deer in the headlights. At the time, I thought that I felt confident, but yes, I was very nervous. I worried, what would my staff think of me? Would they accept me as the new owner? I wondered if the patients would like me and how that would affect things in the office. And I worried that my team would resist change. But what I found was that most of them were kind of like waiting for new direction. They expected it. They expect someone new to come in and to see, okay, how are things going to be different? I've talked about this in the past. I recently interviewed a client of mine, Dr. Dale, in California, and she shared her experience of stepping into leadership and really kind of taking this on and kind of finding this balance in her practice. I have another client that's in New York. She was very nervous to start running the show, afraid of scaring off team members, but she found that after really taking hold of the reins, her team members showed up with extra energy. they wanted someone with leadership. They wanted someone to provide a vision and to lay out a roadmap for them. And I found that to be true in my practice. I leaned into what many of you have heard me talk about is level 5 leadership that Jim Collins talks about, which he defines as strong will paired with humility. So I needed to lead decisively, but I also needed to listen. I needed buy-in from my team members. I could not do this on my own. And that balance and focus on leadership mattered more than any single system that we implemented in the practice, because without the ability to lead your team, to provide the clarity, the vision, and the training, the systems will not be successful. So lean into leadership. One thing I want to talk about is a method for preventing burnout. Most people love starting new things, talking about a new goal or something different that they're going to do or to become. This part is easy to get excited about. It can be even exhilarating, all at the same time of being intimidating. And I think the intimidation is part of what makes it feel new and exciting and gives you a bit of a rush. But that does not last very long. Over time, you get used to the process. It can get monotonous. It can be stressful. And this is where grit really comes in. What separates the average from the high performers is staying committed after the excitement wears off. Reps, follow through, a commitment to constant improvement. Scotty Scheffler, #1 golfer in the world over the last few years, talked about how after you win a golf tournament, that high, he said, lasts about 2 minutes. And very quickly, people are asking, well, what are you going to do in the next tournament? Okay, that was last week. What about this week? He talked about how it's really that whole process, that the winning and the lifestyle and everything is not super fulfilling in and of itself, but it's a pursuit of excellence. It's the constant practice. If you can learn to embrace the process and realize that the process in and of itself can lead to fulfillment, that is when you really start to see some of those higher level wins. Scotty said that, anyone that is #1 in the world is not focusing on being #1 in the world. They are focusing on their process. And I think that cannot be overstated. It's easy to say, okay, things are good enough. We're good enough where we're at. But this is where progress dies. Growth comes from doing the hard and repetitive work long after it stops being fun. And if you can start things off with this type of mindset, you'll be ahead of the game. At the same time, if you're years into it, you can change your mindset. Start looking for the challenges. Understand that by leaning into them, that is where you're going to see the most personal growth. Start doing things just purely for the growth that you can experience. And when you embody this mentality, it will change the way that you think about work. After embracing this yourself, you can then train your team members to follow your patterns and habits. You can start talking about things differently, where you can recognize the wins throughout each and every day. That starts to get fun, and the culture in your office will change. So let me talk about a few things. One thing is what I didn't do that I think commonly gets chased by newer dentists. I did not chase all the popular CE courses. I was not traveling a significant amount. I did not try and master everything at once. I focused on the fundamentals. I read textbooks. I joined online networking groups where I could look at cases that other doctors were posting, situations that they had to maneuver during leadership and ownership in their practice. And I also started doing this during dental school as well. This is not something that you have to wait until you become a dentist to learn from. But specifically on the clinical side with CE, I spent a good amount of time learning from others and being able to post cases that I had done and then asking for feedback. And you've got to have thick skin to be able to ask for that, but that is completely free and it does not take any time compared to traveling, somewhere around the world and getting training from, someone else. So This is an incredible amount of growth that is available to all of us. And I would highly encourage everyone to lean into those areas. But this approach took me time to figure out. In my first year, I took an ortho course and I traveled to LA multiple times. After finishing it, I realized that to be confident in ortho, I would need to devote a lot more time and energy to it. At the same time, there was already a massive opportunity in my practice to do more endo and implants and even just crown and bridge. So I pivoted. That decision to put ortho aside saved me time and money and focus. And I'm not saying that it will be the same for you with ortho or considering other procedures, but my point is that not every opportunity is worth pursuing. Knowing when to stop the pursuit of something specific is just as important as knowing when to start. So all of those things went into creating a cash cow in my practice, leading to me being able to have a lot of flexibility, paying off student loans, being able to invest in real estate, to plan for the future, to develop a timeline for when I wanted to reach financial independence. And that was a really fun experience. But one thing that I didn't expect after making my first million was how much confidence changed for me. I felt more ownership of the practice. I trusted my decisions more. That confidence carried into conversations with my team and with patients. And then on the flip side, I also have more time at that point. Before I had made my first million, I cut back to 3 days a week. I had more time to be present with my wife and kids. I had a little bit more time and energy to focus on a lot of these things that we're talking about with. I was able to get into the coaching side of things, which now, years later, I'm not involved in clinical dentistry. All I do is focus on my family, my lifestyle, have time for hobbies, and I focus on the work that I really enjoy doing. And I love what I do. I'm in a very fortunate position to be able to turn down work that I don't want to do, whether that's with, just something that I don't feel like is a good match, or it is, I don't like the vibes that I'm getting from this dentist, or I feel like they have unrealistic expectations. So the power to be able to say no to something because I don't need to in order to make things work in life is incredibly freeing. So I don't feel near the same amount of financial pressure that I did early on. But to understand also, wealth does not make life easier. It makes it more flexible, which can be great, but also takes time to figure out and to maneuver as well. So in closing and wrapping all of this up, I have definitely heard comments over the years that people saying my claims are not true, or that I just was kind of lucky, the stars aligned. And that may totally be true. I don't think that it's super likely. Luck doesn't explain repeatable outcomes, especially when I've been able to help other dentists to make this same type of progress in their life. Proper planning followed by proper execution leads to predictable results. So if you're listening to this and thinking, I know I'm probably capable of more, but I'm probably not focusing on the right things, and I'm not sure where to go and what to do. If you're thinking that, this episode was for you. You can look into all of those things and try and maneuver it yourself, or you can reach out to us at The Lifestyle Practice. We have TLP Academy, which you can do completely on your own and understand some of these things. Or if you're ready for just ramping things up and going full throttle, reach out to one of us, Derek, Matt, or Steve at thelifestylepractice.com, and we can talk about working together. Thanks for listening. I will talk to you next time.